I put up a Facebook post, Zev's probably more familiar with this than some of you might be, about this man named Shulam Dean, and I was not able to read his book from cover to cover. I don't have that much. My heart broke too much already, way too soon into the book. So I wasn't able to really give it everything that I have, but suffice to say, my wife filled me on the rest. Maybe I'll read to you, just for those of you who don't know. Because it's a point that I made on my Monday group, and I think it's an important point. And if we do nothing else today except for talk about this point, it was worth coming about it. Shulam Din, I'll give you some background information, is born in the Square Hasidic. Actually not. Okay, came to the Square Hasidic group.
I told you I knew his parents.
Yeah, his father.
I remember he was a toddler.
Okay, you remember him as a kid? Yeah. Okay, so they, I guess, became Square.
Who is he? I don't know anything about him.
I'll tell you. He wrote a book, and his book is memoirs of a person growing up in the Square Hasidic world and then leaving, and everything that happened and that came along with it, and that his own perspective on it. And I believe that the most convincing thing about Shulam Din's book, because there's actually a whole genre of ex-Hasidic kids who left the community who wrote books. What is unique about his is the lack of anger that you feel. It doesn't come off as venomous or vicious or hatred spewing. And by the way, if somebody were to come off as venomous or vicious, I don't blame them for it one bit. But it comes off as a very well thought out, soft-spoken, intelligent person who just really struggles and is sad and is in a lot of pain. And essentially, about 8 years ago, he finally made that move to leave the community after a long time of internal struggle. And his wife and kids ended up coming with him and then going back. They weren't able to handle the life outside of the community. And
actually, they never left with him.
He said that they did leave with him.
No, they came to visit him, and they were confused by his life. The kids came to visit him.
Okay, I guess he put out a video, and in there he said that...
That's the gentleman that went to his daughter's wedding?
Yes, you know now what the context of what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
She couldn't make
How did you see the video, Raul? You're like,
I got it somewhere. Somebody, I think
from my Facebook page, Raul's...
I look at it, yeah.
Your secret.
Sorry, I don't.
No, you're right. It doesn't. The detail. I told you.
The whole family moved
okay, and then moved back.
The community.
Right.
They were testing the water
outside.
You didn't hear about it until this year. Yeah.
But some of the last 7 years, he's been pretty much out of his family's life. They've cut him out. They little to no contact with most of his children, and much of it having to do with the fact that he's no longer what we would consider an observant Jew, let alone part of the Skver Hasidic group. My personal interest in the story comes from a very different place than other people's. It doesn't help that my wife's grandfather, meaning my mother-in-law's father, was the first mayor of New Square.
Your wife's grandfather?
My mother-in-law's father. Rabbi Daniel Goldstein was the first mayor. He was the founder of New Square. Really.
And it's a small world, the Jewish world.
A tiny world, not just a small, it's like tiny. Square is situated between New York City and Monsey. And it's its own little village. It's called the Village of New Square. And the Village of New Square, maybe if you guys move down, Jack can pull up a chair here. You come this way. The Village of New Square is it's Square from Europe in America, New Square. And they have their own law, their own system, their own rules. You know, if a bunch of people open up their own village legally, then you should know the mayor of New Square is a Hasidic man. And the head of the fire department and the police department are Hasidic people. And the public school is a Hasidic public school with Yiddish as the first language that has a very good English second language program. And they chose which language was the primary language.
Is New Square a small town?
It's a little village, like it's a town is a big word for it.
It's like Kennedy, Texas.
Yeah, it's out in the mount on the way to the mountains in New York.
It's like this mountain.
Like Kennedy, Texas.
New York Alpine or something.
Exactly. Think about this.
What they call mountains.
They have their own. They have their own.
Very low.
Their own everything. They are an insular community. What you might consider extremely religious in Monsey, New York, they consider extremely liberal and open-minded in New Square.
Right.
So if you want to put on a level of 1 to 10 where they stand in religious extremism, yeah, exactly. That's where they're at.
I thought Muncie was.
Now, New Square didn't start that way. It didn't start that way. New Square was founded by the Old Square Rebbe, who was my father-in-law, my grandfather-in-law, meaning my wife's grandfather, was a close Hasidim. He actually wasn't even Hasidic. He was part of Agudat Israel, the Lithuanian Jewish movement, and he just really connected with the Square Rebbe, and ended up moving with him. And they needed a mayor who would be able to read and write English. And being that none of the other Square Hasidim could, my wife's grandfather became the mayor because he was raised in Rhode Island and Brooklyn, and he knew English very well. By default, he was the mayor. My in-laws are the first couple to ever be married in New Square. And if you've ever seen my wedding pictures, my wife is wearing some form of a tablecloth on top of her head, and that kerchief is a very thick white veil. Veil is not the right word for it, but you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, that veil was given to my mother-in-law by the Square Rebbe as the first married couple who ever got married in New Square, and that's why it was so important for them to use it. When a few people decide to go up to the mountains to develop their own little community, think about us. We're starting a new community. What do we like? What do we not like? What is our style? What is our flavor? It's all fine and dandy so long as we're adults that are sitting around the table and having a discussion. The moment that a second, third generation rolls around, and not everyone is made in the same cookie-cutter image, and people have questions, and people are questioning authorities, and people are wondering, this lifestyle might do it for you, it might even do it for 90% of the people who live here. It doesn't do it for me, so what's my place in wanting to live with you but not like you? And the answer is zero tolerance policy. And you start to have excommunications, people being thrown out of the township, people being bullied and intimidated to go away, families being split into two, and Shulam Din essentially was chosen to be the lucky one to be thrown out. He may have left. But when it comes to a family, imagine you have 8 kids, 10 kids, 13 kids, 2 kids, doesn't make a difference. You have a wife, you even have parents. Their decision is going to come first. It's my community, then it might be my family. Because if I start to comply with my son who decided to challenge the system, I might also get thrown out, or my sister, or my brother, or my child. It's that kind of community. I'm not necessarily talking about him. It's not the first person in the world to ever go through such an experience. So like I said, the fact that his memoir had very little, it doesn't have a tone of anger and venom and viciousness, is what made it so, I think, in my opinion, what made it so popular, and to me, so personally interesting. Shulam Din put up a post on Thursday night, which I posted on my Facebook on Motzei Shabbat, and since then I've been a different person. I've been bothered this whole week by it. I want to read it to you. Some of you may have already read it, but just for... I'll read you the story. And then I'll explain to you why I'm bringing it.
Just dad with a wedding?
Yeah.
Okay, that's the same.
Just to be clear,
Screeching
Yes.
so
guy protecting.
you can't live with them in them.
Protecting
This is a healthy thing?
No, I didn't say it's
okay,
healthy.
just asking.
Yeah, every family should excommunicate their father and throw him out and never see his kids again.
And never speak to him again.
That's good for you.
Right, exactly what
No,
Zev
I've
said.
heard so many discussions and explanations of so many different things here in the last since I joined this call. You could come tell me now that's perfectly healthy, and I'd go, "Wow, really?" That's a notebook at this point.
No, it's not healthy.
A lot of cults do things like that in the non-Jewish world.
Yeah.
Yeah, somebody has to kind of figure out how.
So he wrote the following post. This was on Friday.
That's the tipping point.
So he's talking about Thursday.
Well past.
Said, yesterday I saw my 2 eldest daughters. For 8 years I waited for this, wondering if it will ever come, wondering if this was forever. Yesterday my second daughter, Frady, got married. I was not invited to the wedding. I didn't plan to go, but in the end, encouraged by friends and family to just show up, I put on my suit, ordered an Uber, and took the hour's drive up to New Square. I arranged with my brother to meet me, and we arrived around 1 a.m., just before the mitzvah dance was to begin. Do you know what a mitzvah dance is? David, this is one of those things you're going to learn at the kollel. There you go. Wow, okay. In Hasidic communities, exactly opposite to any other religious community, where brides, grooms, men, women do not dance. In the Hasidic community, maybe with the exception of some Hasidiyot,
With the cloth.
they dance together.
Really?
Yes. At the end, mostly when the strangers have left, the bride comes out. She's completely covered in most communities, not in all. There's exceptions to every rule. And she comes out, and one by one they introduce different family members, mostly brothers, parents, grandparents. And at times, if the Rebbe is there, the Rebbe also dances. And he doesn't actually hold onto the bride and do a waltz with her. She stands still in the middle, and there's a long gartel, like a rope, imagine. And they take one side and they dance around her, back and forth. Listen, the Hasidim...
Dancing for her, not dancing with her, basically.
Yes, Hasidim will tell you it's like the Shekhinah in the middle of the room and the divine presence of God, and you're dancing around it. Sfaradim and Lithuanians would agree that there's no greater Avera than dancing with a lady at a wedding. Hasidim will tell you this is the holiest part of the wedding. Listen, it is what it is. So mitzvah tantzes happen very late. Like at a 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock wedding, the mitzvah tanz will easily happen 12, 1, 2 a.m. That's when it will start. And it could go on depending on which chassidut you're part of. It could be 30 minutes, it could be an hour, it could be 6 hours. Up to the Hasidic group and their style. So he came just before the mitzvah tanz. Said, I was greeted at the door almost immediately by a man I call Shragi in my book. His real name is Yoeli Breyer. I don't know how to
Now
pronounce
he uses the real name.
Yeah, I guess, people are always afraid in the beginning, and then, what can actually happen to me. Who ordered me to leave, would not allow me to enter the wedding hall, and threatened to call the cops. I told him he could if he liked, but I wasn't leaving. He screamed wherever I turned, you write dirty books and dirty articles, your children don't want you here. I didn't want to ruin my daughter's wedding, and I knew that by entering the hall proper, I would create chaos. So I lingered in the lobby where for over 30 minutes this maniac hovered wherever I stood, screaming, shouting, harassing. You write dirty articles in Treif magazines all over the world. You embarrass your children. I don't know where he gets his information from. The man is a complete illiterate. This is the man I've had to deal with all along. The man who orchestrated my children's estrangement from me. Has been telling them horrible things about how I chose to live my life. Continues to lie to them outright just to get them to stay away. All the while, other men came out of the hall to greet me. A group of men even started dancing with me, right there in the lobby. All the while, Breyer circled and screamed like a maniac. At one point, the groom heard I was there, as did my oldest son-in-law, neither of whom I'd ever met. And they came out to greet me with big smiles, thanked me for coming. One man wanted to know just one thing. No, did you bring a check for the chas and kala? He tapped the back of one hand on the palm of the other. No, did you give me? I'll make sure they get it. Zisha Schmelzer, who has a cameo in my book as Zisha Schnitzler, asking for a donation at my son's bris in exchange for a blessing. He was there too, asking now again for a donation in honor of my simcha in exchange for a blessing. My blessings work, you know it. He hasn't changed in 16 years. Other men came out, shook my hand, asked me to come inside. All the while Breyer stood shrieking that if I didn't leave I was ruining my daughter's wedding, that he was going to call the cops. It was truly a surreal experience. On the one hand, there was friendliness and genuine warmth. On the other hand, was such cruelty by a handful of maniacs, led by Breyer and some others in my ex's family, who kept shouting insults. It was infuriating and comical and crushing all at once. I wondered at one point if he might be right, that my children perhaps didn't want me there, and that the commotion was unsettling to many of the attendees. Soon after, however, my eldest son-in-law came to me and said, Siri wants to see you. She would meet me outside. It took me a moment to recognize her, but no longer than a moment. Of course it was her. What do you say to a beloved child you haven't seen and spoken to in 8 years? Whose entire adolescence you were barred from, whose wedding you missed? What do you say when there are so many questions, so many things to say, all of them urgent, but your mind is dizzy with the suddenness of it all? What came out of my mouth was, I've missed you. I felt my insides cracked. Last time we spoke she was 13, angry and sullen. Now she was 21, beautiful and grown and smiling, yet still very much the same person. We barely had a few seconds. My brother who was with me snapped a couple photos with his phone, which wouldn't do the moment justice, and before we knew it, the Breyer fellow was right next to us, screaming at my daughter for daring to speak with me. Frightened of him, she froze, and I turned to ask him to leave. His yelling continued, and my daughter, looking traumatized and overwhelmed, quickly ran off. I did not get to see her again. I'm going to pause here for one more moment. There's a man named Lipa Schmelzer. I don't care if you like his music or not. His music is interesting. I'll tell you, the guy in general is interesting. He dresses interesting. He speaks interesting. His whole thing is interesting. But he was very, very famous as a kid for being this like beautiful Hasidic boy with a voice. To the point that my wife's grandfather used to come and give him gelt under the table. If you could come sing for me, I'll It was a very a beautiful voice always. And then at some point he discovered his talents and went out to be this Hasidic pop star, which is great if you're part of a non-Hasidic community. But if you're part of a Hasidic community, being a pop star doesn't go hand in hand, especially not when he proudly calls himself what many people have called him, which is, I don't know who she is, but I know who he is. They call him the Hasidic Lady Gaga. That's what he's called. So he's out there, he's flamboyant, he is all over the place. This man is a special guy, though. He really, really cares. He was also excommunicated from Skver and kind of had a coming back. He's not back in the community, but he doesn't perform for the Rebbe, but he's around. He's able to do. He's got to Columbia to get a degree. I happen to admire the man and what he does, as he's a good person. So he writes, later with the help of the tzaddik of our generation, my ex-brother-in-law, Lipa Schmelzer, my Fredi, the bride, came out. Her mother and some others tried to prevent her, but Lipa persisted. I was stunned when I saw her. She looked beautiful and so grown up. It was hard for me to...
Kala? You mean his wife?
His daughter, the one who was getting married that night.
I thought you only saw her for a second, that she ran off.
That was her older sister. That he wasn't at her wedding either.
The first wedding altogether.
Yeah. I see.
So this time he had the guts to actually show up. This is the bride.
The bride. Okay.
So she came out. I was also confused about that.
He missed the whole wedding. He's just there for this taunt at the end.
Her mother and some others tried to prevent her, but Lipa persisted. Okay, it was hard for me to reconcile it with the image of her as a little kid. I told her how radiant she looked, what a terrific guy her groom looked to be, and how happy I was for her. Also, how much I think of her every single day. Now too, Breyer, come. Now too, Breyer was back beside us, screaming for me to stay away from her. I told her I loved her. She leaned in close to me and put her hand on my arm, and I couldn't resist and hugged her, despite my brother hissing at me prior. No hugs. Her groom stood nearby the whole time, beaming. Make sure she gets this, I said, and I handed him an envelope with some letters and gifts and cards that had been returned unopened over the years. Then she disappeared back inside. It hurt that I didn't get to see my younger ones, Chaya Suri, Akiva, Hershey, 18, 16, 14. Chaya Suri was surrounded by women who wouldn't let anyone close to even try. A couple people tried to get my sons to come out, but they chose not to. I left feeling at once uplifted, sad, angry, joyful, and anxious. The kind of mixed emotions that keep your adrenaline going and leave you awake in bed for hours afterwards. Joyful for the good, sad that it had to be this way. Angry at those who sought out of pure malice to inflict unnecessary pain. Anxious about where this will all lead, about the if, when, where, how of the future. Anxious about doing what's right, not only for me, but for them, for everyone. It all lasted only about an hour. I got home at 3 a.m. Now a day later, I'm still processing. Still shaking, still feeling the insanity, but also seeing the bright gleaming ray of hope. And that's where he ends his post. The first time I read this piece, I cried. I'm not going to lie to you. I cried.
Have you read the book?
I started off that I have the book. I started reading the book. I skimmed through the rest of the book. My heart broke too many times in one reading. My wife read the book cover to cover, and she filled me in on the rest of the details. I'm not that tough of a person.
I had several friends who were students of his father. His name is Rabbi David Din. Mm-hmm. And my wife has been good friends with his mother, whose name is Bracha Din, who lives in Israel now. And he died many years ago of anorexia. And,
the father?
Yeah, he was a very young boy. And his father was like one of the few Balei Tshuva Rebbes I ever met. He thought of himself as a reincarnation of Rebbe Nachman, that kind of a rabbi. Very unusual fellow.
Right.
What apparently he broke with the community, why they got upset about him, was that he got a TV in his house.
I don't think we really realize the extent to what minor violations need to happen for a person to be out. I mean, it could be listening to the radio.
Yeah.
It could be going to the wrong neighborhood and the wrong day and the wrong time. It could be changing the color of your socks. It could be. It's not a joke. And like I said in the beginning, as my wife's grandfather was the first mayor of New Square. And I have on good word that that's not the reason it was founded. But when you have to when you choose, this is a community, and they have a very extreme and not a healthy, in my opinion. I can't tell you what they think. It does work for many of them. It doesn't work for many other people. They have a very extreme, forget interpretation of Judaism. They have a very extreme communal, social standard that they make everyone uphold. To the point, my grandmother, my wife's grandmother, still lives in New Square, and across the street from her is the big shul. And they have actually on the sides of the street in Yiddish a sign that says men and women. So there are two sides of the street. So if I were to walk with my wife on a Friday night, she would have to walk on one side of the street, and I would have to walk on the other side of the street. And because I don't handle such things well, I just told her, you go to the car first, I'm coming second, I'm not going to do this walking down streets. But it's that kind of place, and you should know, the residents aren't ripping down these signs. They're actually quite happy living in this little bubble of a not really a reality, but that's where they live. And I'm not here to say, so how do I change them? But I will tell you my initial reaction. I've only been in Square once, so I'm not an expert on Square Hasidim. But I'll tell you that when I was there, and I say this with a heaviness, not a joy, I didn't feel that I was experiencing another denomination of Judaism. I felt that I was experiencing a different religion.
Right.
And I think it's an important thing to say. There are many groups of Jews that I'm like, whoa, you guys are out there. But I don't, we're all part of the same cake, we're all part of the same boat. I feel like this is a different boat in a different direction, coming from a different place. And that being said, I don't really mind that people are living this way. The question is, what got them there? How did that happen? It didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen, boom, we became a radical Hasidic group. And this really doesn't even have to do with Hasidim. I couldn't care less if it was Hasidim or Lithuanians or Sephardic people, and I'm sure there's extremism everywhere. But how did this happen?
There's a slippery slope of more and more stringencies.
Oh, very good. And this is true.
Which is what's happening to the Haredim.
Now, there's a famous story about a Moroccan guy who made Aliyah to Israel as a kid in the 60s. And his friend, this Israeli kibbutznik, takes him out to go see the train tracks. Now, this guy from Morocco has never seen a train in his life. And they get to the train tracks, he says, come, let's lay down, let's look up at the sky, look at the clouds. And he lays down, and they hear a choo in the distance. And, one friend, he knew, he jumped up, got out of the way of the train, and the poor Moroccan guy lay there, got run over by the train. Somehow he survived. It's a joke, it's not a real story. Yeah, he got into the hospital, and a year and a half he spent recuperating, full body casts and surgeries. And he gets out after a year and a half. His family makes a big welcoming home party for him. Comes home, someone put up a kettle of tea on the stove, and the kettle goes, ooh. Yeah. He takes a baseball bat, smashing the kettle into pieces and breaking it. Broke the stove top. Says, are you crazy? What's going on with you? You should have been at a different kind of hospital, not the... And he said, these things, if you don't kill them when they're young, they get very dangerous when they're much bigger.
His PTSD
The truth is that tea kettles don't ever become trains. Yeah. But this idea is true, that problems that exist in the world, they didn't happen overnight. Very rarely will you find something that people the world went downhill in one day. It doesn't really happen that way. And it happens from, and forgive me for saying this, because somehow in our American value system we've lost the Jewish value, and that is, we've considered tolerance and respect to be values. And they are. In the right place, they're valuable. Tolerance and respect is also a very dangerous thing. When you tolerate or respect things that should not be tolerated or respected, they end up, it's like a snowball, just bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until it'll hurt somebody. And we as a Jewish community, and you might not agree with how I'll interpret this, but I'll tell you the following. It might just be about which kosher symbol I don't eat. That's really all it is in my family. Yeah. Or in their family, it really might be that they do Nitilat Yadayim in their bed because they don't want to even get out onto the floor and do Nitilat Yadayim there or walk over to the sink. Or it could be, the way we dress. It's a color, it's a length, it's a measurement, it's a style we don't wear in this house. Things that are based on halakha, obviously, I'm telling you, we follow halakha. I'm talking about things that this is our social norm. We don't tell you this is a law, this is a custom. It's a tradition. No, it's our standard in our group. And they're very honest. It's not a law. It doesn't say this anywhere. You say, what's your source? We don't have a source. It's just what we do. We're not forcing it on you. It's our thing. And almost when people tell you that, like, oh, it's just our custom. they almost look at you with like this disdain of, you should have it too, but you don't. So because it's a free country, I can't force it on you. That's almost the underlying current of what they're saying. And this happens from every group of people in every place in the world. I'm not singling out any group that you might be thinking of. But what happens is, in one generation, so we tolerate it. Fine, we tolerate it. But what happens the next time? Or the next rabbi who changes, or the next rebbe who takes on court, or the next community that adopts this custom, or the next... I read a fascinating article, but I don't know if it's historically accurate, but it's definitely philosophically accurate. He was talking about the stringencies of Pesach. Some people don't eat fish on Pesach. Do you know that? There are Hasidic groups who don't eat fish on Pesach.
Because they eat bread?
No, because the fish, very good, used to be pickled in alcohol.
Vinegar?
Alcohol. That's how they would travel around. They weren't a fresh fish, so they don't eat any fish, because once upon a time it was a chametz alcohol. Or there are people that don't eat chicken on Pesach. There was a town in Europe where Rebbe once shechted a chicken, and inside there were grains, and oh my gosh, there's grain on Pesach. So they don't eat grain. You've probably heard of some communities that don't have milk or eggs that were bought on Pesach. Or garlic, or
soaked in beer.
We're talking about older customs, and I'm not talking here about like kitniyot, things that are mentioned in Shulchan Aruch. The Rambam mentions kitniyot as an old custom. I'm not talking about those things. There's some people that don't use paper goods on Pesach. There might be a cornstarch layer, all kinds of. Everyone came up with his own little thing. I can't eat vegetables unless I peel them. I don't eat fruits unless that. You know exactly what I'm saying. Every community has their own thing. And this person wrote an article saying, is it warm in here?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. It's okay with you then. Yeah. So he says that it used to be like, he said he was assuming, in Ger, in Europe, they had one stringency they did on Pesach. And in Vizhnitz, another one. And in Lubavitch, another one. And in every place, in Lithuania, they have theirs. And then all of a sudden they all came to America, and we started building communities, and you know what? Let's just mush them all together. And then, instead of everyone having their one stringency, we suddenly have like 40 stringencies. And then that became the standard. Oh, it's a community standard. We don't do any of these things. And I don't know that he's right historically, but definitely that happens in other contexts in the Jewish community. You start adopting other people's things that they don't do. And then all of a sudden, you're not just doing your custom, you're doing other people's customs. There was a rabbi, I actually was very impressed with the article, a rabbi in Crown Heights. He is a Rosh Kollel in Chabad. I googled him. He seems to be very influential in the Chabad movement. Also a little bit controversial, but influential, definitely. And this rabbi gave a speech in his kollel 2 years ago on Pesach. If you want the link, my father can send it to you. And he said, listen, there are some stringencies that we do in Chabad that we only do because we were born in Lubavitch and that was the custom. He said, but if you're a newcomer to Chabad, you should not take these customs on yourself. He said, because they're not Chabad customs. He said, they're just geographic. We were there, and so my father did it, so what can I do? But if your father didn't do it, then there's not one of those customs you have to take on. And I don't know that every Chabad rabbi in the world would agree with him, but that was a very intellectually honest thing to say, and that's a fair thing to say. Some things are, we believe it's in the books, and that's why you have to do it, and some things is just because of a family custom that we do it. Sfaradim also have our own craziness of things that we do, but everyone's got their own thing. When we start to tolerate certain things, though, they just grow and grow and grow. An example is a famous story about the Chavetz Chaim. The Chavetz Chaim, what's his name?
Rabbi Israel Meir Kagan.
Very good. Rabbi Israel Meir HaKohen Kagan. Yeah, he is from Radin in Poland. He wrote the Mishnah Berurah. Famous author of the Chavetz Chaim. When Rav Peretz says his name, he shakes. He's a tzaddik, Chavetz Chaim. You should know there are some times that in yeshiva, Rav Peretz rules against Sephardic halakha. Not halakha, but if there's two opinions on the Shulchan Aruch how to interpret, one of them is Sephardic and one of them is the Chavetz Chaim, he won't always be loyal to the Sephardic one if the Chavetz Chaim says something. He almost always defers towards Chavetz Chaim. The Chavetz Chaim once had the honor, he wanted to host Rabbi Meir Shapir of Lublin, who was the founder of the Daf Yomi movement. Learn one page of Talmud a day for 7.5 years, you'll finish the Talmud. He was a big Hasidic rabbi in Lublin. He had a yeshiva called Chachmei Lublin. My brother Ronen is married to someone named Kira Weinberg. Kira's grandfather, Bella, if you know her father, was the Chazan for Rav Meir Shapir of Lublin. I gave a shiur in 2012 in Lublin, in the yeshiva. in his memory. He had an impressive yeshiva in Lublin, not a simple man. He was one of the leaders of European Jewry on the Hasidic side of the coin. Rav Meir Shapira of Lublin wanted to visit Radin in Poland because he wanted to spend Shabbat with Chavetz Chaim. So they came very often wanted to go be with each other. It's different than today. Nobody wants to see each other. Then it was like everyone wanted to hop somewhere else. So Rav Meir Shapira sent a letter and said, Chavetz Chaim, would you host me for Shabbat? Chavetz Chaim said, of course I would host you. I would love to. The second letter he sends him says, where we come from, in Lublin, we have a custom that we don't sit with women at the same table. And so when I would come to your house, I would ask if maybe your wife and my wife could sit together in the kitchen, and we will sit at the table. And this is a normal custom in many, 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 especially Hungarian Hasidic homes. I was actually this summer at a house, I had the same thing. They took my wife to the kitchen. I told my wife, I'm going to come sit in the kitchen also. She said, if you come sit in the kitchen, I'm going to divorce you. Yeah, that was the... no, God forbid. But I guess she's more used to it than I am. And this was a liberal house, though. And between the kitchen and the dining room, they cut out a big window in the wall. So really, you could, if you stood up, you could see each other.
There was no mechitza.
No mechitza. It was a wall, more than a mechitza.
A wall
So... Rav Meir Shapira said, would you let me bring my custom with me to Radin? And the Chavetz Chaim wrote a very famous letter. And he said, dear Rabbi Shapira, in Radin there are very many hotels. And if you like to stay in a hotel, I'm more than happy to host you at a hotel, and you could come meet me at the synagogue. He said, but never will someone come to my house and ask my wife to sit in a different room than me when I have a Shabbat meal. And Rav Meir Shapira, Rav Meir Shapira of Lublin, I don't know if he ended up coming or he didn't end up coming, but one thing he didn't end up doing, he didn't end up coming to the Chavetz Chaim's house. Now, us people who are, hey, go Chavetz Chaim, yeah, that's amazing. What about those who are followers of Rav Meir Shapira of Lublin? They're highly offended. Well, Chavetz Chaim thinks he's so holy, you're going to sit with your wife at the table. That almost doesn't sound so holy.
But what's holier is the kavod of one's home and what,
Says you, but the chief rabbi of the world. One Shabbat, you can't sit with your wife? Come on, one Shabbat.
Says me that we sit in the kitchen and they sit in the
It happened over here in the university.
Yeah, I remember. So, what do I have to say to that? The Chavetz Chaim clearly didn't believe that tolerance of a custom that he felt was problematic. He didn't have to tolerate it, especially not in his home. It doesn't have to take the story from the Chavetz Chaim for you to realize not everything that somebody else does. You might say, listen, you can do whatever you want, but you don't have to stand for it just because another good person does it. The Chavetz Chaim didn't put up letters all over the world saying Rav Meir Shapira is an evil man. He just didn't buy into this custom. But okay, one thing was a Shabbat meal. Today, families, the whole week they're sitting like that.
What happened to what we learned before about the respect of going to somebody else's place and knowing what they do?
Oh.
Yeah,
here you brought me to my...
Today, they don't go to that person's place and they don't eat at that person's house. That's holier.
So here you brought me to where I'm getting with all of this. Because Rav Avram Ben Arambam is trying to bring us to a place of purity of actions, taking a common road, not an individual road. Sometimes people will say that I obsess over details. Like, come Pesach time, I promise you will hear things from me about Pesach, the same things you heard last year and the year before, and things that I cannot get out of my system. I can't. And the reason is because I believe New Square came into being because we tolerated little things. There's a man who doesn't have a family because we respected and tolerated things we didn't have to.
Something small had big consequences.
Sure, much later down the road. Much later down the road. I want to give you an example.
Yeah, but clearly the rest of his family is brainwashed.
You say they're brainwashed. They say they're living in Gan Eden. No, that's who am I to tell them what they are?
Well, some of them, not all.
Now, okay.
Some of them are pretending and hiding under the cover because they have.
Right.
Those are the ones that came out to greet him, right? That came out to the wedding. They just
Don't bring any Kool-Aid out.
I'm a Sephardic rabbi. Yeah, we're aware?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. I'm a Sephardic rabbi who had the displeasure of praying in an Ashkenazi shul with a Sephardic person saying Kaddish. Understand, the displeasure was not praying in the Ashkenazi shul. The displeasure was seeing the Sephardic man saying Kaddish. You're in another synagogue. They have a different nusach.
Right.
They're all saying Kaddish. There's 10 people saying Kaddish, including the rabbi. And you suddenly decide that the word Revach v'Atzala, Refuah, Geula, Shezava, that's more important than destroying the whole order inside of someone else's synagogue. I'm an individual, I have a custom, it's my tradition. You're in a place that there's another group of Jews. There's a rabbi who's leading that community. A little bit of humility won't hurt you. No Sephardic evil angel in the afterlife is going to condemn you to hell because you didn't say Revach v'Atzala. But when you're in someone else's territory, so you have to know there are laws of Derech Eretz that apply there. There's a tractate of Talmud called Derech Eretz, and the Talmud says, Al tiyeh omed ben hayoshvim. Don't be standing among those who are sitting. Al tiyeh omed ben hayoshvim, and don't stand among those who are other way around. Don't sit among those who are standing. Klalosh Davar, says the Talmud, the rule is Al teshaneh min minhag hamakom. Don't do differently than what everyone else is doing. Now the rule here, people say minhag hamakom. You've heard this word. It's the custom of this place. Custom. If there's a law that a place is violating, I don't have to violate the law because everyone else is doing it. So if I go pray with a bunch of murderers and after tefillah they kill somebody that's how they do kiddush, I don't go kill somebody also. You're aware? Like, I'm obviously choosing an extreme example. I don't want to give a common example. Halachot, but customs, standing here, this siddur or that, but what do you care? There used to be this respect. I came to another community. Okay, so it's different here. It's different.
So then when we're praying here and servicing, and some people from Ashkenazi come and they start going, oh, is that?
I've never heard someone Ashkenazi going, no, but you're right. The truth is that here I'm happy to say that I think our community doesn't mind. Either way, somebody does it as long as they're praying. Some communities don't really do. There's like this balance that everything is the same way. People open up the curtain on the ark the same way. People walk around the room in the same direction. They're like synagogues that are very communities that have standards. Right. I think our community is like a little bit all over the place, so we don't really care. Anyone does it.
That brings me to, you say you're a Sephardic rabbi. I see you as a Sephardic who happens to be a rabbi.
Okay, I would. Someone asked me if this is a.
All over the place may not be the right description, because I think we've come as a group to accept a certain, maybe undefined shita, so to speak.
Yes.
It's based on a Sephardic, prayer book, some of the minhagim, but
I wasn't putting us down. I was raising us up.
But there's there is an order to it. There is a way to it, and it's one that allows people to mutually respect each other in the difference without tolerance, but by actual acceptance.
I think I would categorize ourselves. Someone once asked me, like, if I pushed you up against the wall and forced you to put a definition on the synagogue, I would say we're philosophically Sephardic, not actually Sephardic. Our philosophy is a Sephardic one, because what most people don't really understand is Sephardic Judaism also has a philosophy. It's not just Hasidim that have a philosophy or Lithuanians that have a philosophy. There's a certain, and part and parcel of our philosophy is really letting other people be who they want to be. Really allowing people to connect to all kinds of teachings and denominations and understandings. And I really believe that in our core, and that. You're right, Zev is correct. It's more organized than the way I would present it. So where am I getting at with all of this? We tolerate things, and there are certain things that cannot be tolerated. I had a couple at my house a while ago. And I said, please don't ask me who, don't ask me what, don't ask me where. You have a seichel Hashem gave to you when you were born. It has advanced since the day you were born. Use it. A couple that came to my house for a dinner. It was a weeknight. They needed a place to stay for the night. They were traveling, not from here. And we put them up gladly, they didn't want to pay for a hotel. Please stay with us. My wife made dinner. Mistake number one.
You weren't supposed to make
I don't know, I thought I was going to help them out. They came to sit at our table, and they drank some water in paper cups. And didn't eat anything. Oh, we're full. Oh, I know. I understand how this works. I'm a trained professional. Yes. They didn't eat in my house.
passive aggressive.
That's fine.
They're food.
Now, I wasn't offended. More chicken for me. Great. Tomorrow, and that means I don't have to make dinner tomorrow night. Good. That's not what upset me. I happened to be close to the person who came. I said, hey, so-and-so, you're a rabbi. Let's have a conversation. An intellectually honest conversation. I agreed to be truthful and honest. You have to agree to the same thing. Okay. So we had a discussion. They were Hasidic, from a certain Hasidic group. And we got into a beautiful conversation, which I stayed out of because my wife led the conversation, about Hasidut, which I am not an authority in. So, Hasidut, great, I'm watching. They say they're the only Hasidic group around. My wife says, I exist also. We're Karlin Stolen. They say, no, but our Hasidic group is the pedigree of all the Hasidic rabbis in the world. My wife says, do you know that the Baal Shem Tov had a student called the Maggid of Midrash, and he had many disciples, and our Rebbe is actually older than your Rebbe. He was one of the original disciples. Doesn't make a difference. We are the pedigree. Okay, I'm fine. I got good. Do you study any other Hasidic books? Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev, Rabbi Eli Melech of Lezhensk. Forget like today's Rebbes. I'm talking about the original. Everyone agrees they're the originals. No, we don't have time to read their books. We have not yet finished all the books of our rabbis. Interesting. Now your rabbi is a brilliant man. Quotes many books. The Arizal, for example, is quoted. The Zohar is quoted. Do you study Kabbalah or you just study the works of Chassidut? No, we don't study Kabbalah. Why? Because we trust our rabbis that whatever they needed to take out of Kabbalah, they took out of it. It's not for us to study. So you mean to say you choose to be ignorant? No, we mean to say that we follow our rabbis. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And the bottom line is, so do you consider me Hasidic? No. Okay, that was an enlightening discussion. At least that discussion happened, and they were honest, and they're right. That's really the understanding, is you're not really Hasidic.
They're cults.
Okay, I'm using, you're right. So I'm Simcha. Fine, that was a discussion. Now I step in. I say, ladies, you can fight later. Now there's a halakha. Halakha says that when you go to another Jew's house, it's a Yirei Shamayim. I'm not talking to you. You go now to a house of a person who owns a shrimp restaurant. A person who's like, he goes to synagogue with you, he prays with you, he eats with you. You know that he values kosher. He makes food for you. Says Rambam, basar. He puts meat or fish or cheese in front of you. You eat it. You eat it. Why? Because you don't undermine another person's Yirat Shamayim without any good reason to do so.
They have a reason here.
Oh, they said, I have a reason. My reason is that our community standards are different than yours. I said, you think the Rambam was stupid? What do you think the Rambam wrote this halakha for?
They don't follow that.
The Rambam wrote this halakha precisely because people have different communal standards. You think you're the first person to invent Judaism? How in the times of the Talmud, you had rabbis that had chicken with milk. Because that was their communal standard, and their halakha was, when you go to a place where Jews don't have chicken and milk, you don't do it.
Milk, chicken does sometimes milk.
Right.
Chicken, not with chicken milk. Chicken and milk together.
Chicken has no milk.
Meaning, what we would today say is meat and milk, but they have that combination. It's not the first time in our history we've had different kosher standards, and none are as extreme as the case I just mentioned. There's another halakha. I'm a Sephardic rabbi, and I've been put in situations before. I'm not taking away what you told me, okay? Fine? Yes, right. I understand. I appreciate the definition. When I'm sitting at a table, and it's happened to me before, someone Ashkenazi, I'm by another Ashkenazi rabbi's house. Happened to me recently in Israel. And they put out a certain kind of food that I am technically not allowed to eat. It exists. You want to know like what? Like meat. Sephardic shechita is much stricter than Ashkenazi shechita. Now, in America, it happens to be not the opposite, but there's no non-glat meat in America really being sold. There is, but not really. In Israel, though, it's very normal. Like even big Talmidei Chachamim eat non-glat meat if they're Ashkenazi, which means it's kosher, but not glat. Maran says that not glat meat is not kosher. Maran, Rabbi Yosef Karo, says not glat meat is not kosher. Meaning what Ashkenazim would say is kosher, but not glat, Maran would say is treif. But this man's a Torah scholar. He's not just some guy from the street. He puts food in front of me, and you eat it.
Kind of embarrassing.
Not matter of embarrassing. He's a Torah scholar. He knows. I'm not dealing here with a person who's going to get offended. There's no monopoly on being offended. I'm offended he served me such food. Because there's a halakha that Torah scholars, when they're with each other, I rely on a Torah scholar to be truthful. I rely on a Torah scholar's halachot. When I'm in his domain, I can follow his halachot. He's a Torah scholar. There's a certain, forgive me if I'm telling you something that doesn't sound so democratic. In Jewish law, there is a difference between Torah scholars and people who are not Torah scholars. And when you're with a Torah scholar, there's a certain amount, it's not respect. Imagine if I were to go, if I were to go to the Stolner Rebbe today, and he would give me something from the Tish, a cracker, I'll ask him, I don't eat that hechsher. I would be guilty of violating halakha. You're going to the Stolner Rebbe? You think that what he eats is not kosher? It might not be kosher in my community because we have a different standard, but who are you lying to that a Rebbe doesn't keep kosher? If I were to go to the Lubavitcher Rebbe when he was alive and he would be handing out honey cake, and I would start asking him, we're Sephardic, we need to know who baked the cake, did they turn on the oven, I would be guilty of violating halachot. A Rebbe gives you something, he's a Talmid Chacham, a Torah scholar, the leader of thousands of Jews, you have the right to question his kashrut. It doesn't just apply to Hasidic Rebbes, it applies across the chart to Torah scholars. And I told him, the moment you tell me that you agree to violate this halakha, that your standards are more important than a certain code that has existed among Torah scholars for thousands of years, you are the reason why our religion is going down the drain.
You said that?
Absolutely. I was upset.
Boy.
And he was like, what do you mean? I said, can you imagine? Moshe Rabbeinu is going to come back one day, the days of Mashiach. You think he keeps kosher like you keep kosher? Moshe Rabbeinu's never heard of a kashrut symbol in his life. And now he's going to invite you. Moshe Rabbeinu, remember, he's going to invite you to the meal. You're going to, sorry, I don't eat at your house because our Rebbe said differently. That's how it works by you. A Talmid Chacham, I was telling you specifically, I'm using the word over and over. A Torah scholar, there's a value. If we were now living in Morocco, or you were living in Poland, and a person comes to you with a get, and the get says, I was divorced in the Beit Din of Cordova. Listen, I'm in Poland, I'm in Morocco. I don't know who the Beit Din of Cordova is. Torah scholars, though, they're the head of a Beit Din. This is before we have movements that are led by fake Torah scholars. I'm talking about like real Torah scholars. If I don't have a right to not honor that divorce contract, a Torah scholar signed his name on something. The Talmud says in Masechet Sotah, a Torah scholar will never let something unclean come out from under his hands. There's a certain integrity you expect, and so we accept that divorce. We would marry somebody. I would marry somebody with a get that came from a different Beit Din, even I don't know who they are. Somebody converted to Judaism, and they're coming now from Russia to Egypt. The Beit Din in Cairo would say, you have your certificate of conversion, you're Jewish. There's nothing to question. Oh, who was the rabbi? Where did he go to yeshiva? There's no such question that you ask. A Torah scholar put his name on something. That's all you need to know. There is no other standard that can be applied to the situation. And the fact that you live in a world and I live in a world where what I'm saying is a novel idea, I'm telling you that it's 5,776 years old. The Torah was created on this rule. The Talmud was written with this in mind. If what I'm saying is a novel idea, we are in a bad generation. I'm not asking you to trust everybody in the world with everything in the world. Talmidei Chachamim, you're by another Talmid Chacham. You don't ask what food, what this, what that. You don't ask. It doesn't work that way. And it's not just about kashrut. It's about everything. I was praying in a different synagogue recently, and the rabbi made a mistake in judgment on a certain halakha, in my opinion. So someone came over because they like to, Rabbi Yoni, what do you think about what he said? So he's right.
Yeah.
He's right. Of course he's right. In this community, he's right. Yeah. He's the rabbi of the community. I'm a nobody here. There is such a halakha also. There was once a rabbi who came to Tveria. Now, in our generation, he came to Tveria. I wanted to put in my book, but I didn't have the source of where it was written, so I chose to only put things that I could source in my book. He came to Tveria, and the Eruv fell down on Shabbat. But the rabbi in that synagogue in Tveria went to look at the situation. He came back. There's a Tosfot on the Gemara that says this situation is still kosher. Everyone, please continue carrying on Shabbat. Don't worry, no panic. After Shabbat, the guest Torah scholar came over to the rabbi and said, Rabbi, between the two of us, that Tosfot you quoted has been disproved in many different places throughout the Achronim. Nobody follows his opinion. The rabbi looked into the source and said, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell my synagogue? Wait, let everybody carry on Shabbat? The whole town is carrying on Shabbat because you didn't want to say anything? He said, Rabbi, it's a halakha. Carrying on Shabbat is maybe a rabbinic prohibition. But challenging a Torah scholar in his community, he said that's already violating the basics of the Torah. That's violating what the Torah stands on. He says, much better they should carry on Shabbat than they should think for one moment that their rabbi is mistaken. This is a value. When you hear a story like that, that's a value that you want to see. Other communities won't come up. They won't spring up in our side. Oh, we don't hold of you, we don't like you, we don't eat by you, we don't pray with you, we don't. All of these things that happen are terrible that they exist, but we can put a stop to it. Stop tolerating things. Stop tolerating any kind of deviation from halakha. Sephardic halakha, Ashkenazi halakha. Halakha is halakha. I don't care which way you follow halakha. Prove to me in a book, in a source, that this is halakha. Try telling me about community standards, social standards. If you wear your shtreimel in this direction, or I only let people wear black jackets or blue jackets, or what color shirts with tzitziot, or the inside or the outside. These are not things that are going to make or break the Jewish world, but undermining Talmidei Chachamim, Torah scholars, and undermining the basics of trust between Am Yisrael, that will bring down, it really has brought down half the Torah. And if we don't want the other half of the Torah to sing, this must be a value which this community and this call is based on. I'm done with my rant.
Would you say that halacha has a more innate flexibility to minhag?
Sure.
Because minhags seem to get stuck and don't change, whereas halacha...
Let me one up you.
Yeah, please.
And it's good. You're right. You bring up a good point. Harav Peretz. Somebody once came to him, Rabbi, but the minhag is not like that. Harav Peretz pointed to the whole wall of books in the Beit Midrash, the Gemara, the Shulchan Aruch, the Rambam. He said, I have a suggestion. Why don't you take all of these books and throw them in the garbage? He said, write your own book called the Book of Minhagim. He said, since when is this book? It doesn't even exist. It's going to challenge everything we have. So what are these books for decoration? It's going to read them and then do otherwise than what it's... But
that's how people live.
That's how the Jew... It's almost... That's what's defined as Orthodox, almost, is not following what it says in the Shulchan Aruch. And by Shulchan Aruch, I don't mean servitude to Rabbi Yosef Karo. The Ramah is also in the Shulchan Aruch. But Halakha... More than this, Harav Peretz, that's what I meant by one-upping you. Harav Peretz told me, there's a book called Sefer Chasidim. In the Sefer Chasidim of Rabbi Yehuda Chassid, he has a will that we're not even sure he wrote. Okay, so it's supposedly his will. Now, even if he did write it, we're not even sure that he wrote it publicly. Rather, it might have just been an internal family request, not a book of laws for the whole world to follow. And in there, he says certain things that you can or cannot do. What days of the week you're allowed to cut your nails on, who you're allowed to marry. You shouldn't marry a girl with the same name as your mother. They could die young, all kinds of things like that.
You're right.
Now, yes. Now, they don't have sources in halakha. There are things that their source is this letter. And you'll find already, if you think of some names of big rabbis, some of them already ignored this will and married whoever they wanted to marry. I have a friend, he's still single. There's a girl that's been suggested to him over and over and over again, and he refuses to go out with her because her middle name is the same as his mother's. Until when? Until when are we going to keep these things up? Okay, let's leave it. Judaism getting superstitious is not the point of today's discussion. But Harav Peretz said, I wish that Hashem or Rabbi Yonatan Halevy would have put the 10 Commandments inside of this letter. Because somehow the Jews are more strict about this than they are about the 10 Commandments. Because maybe maybe just Shabbat he would have put in there. Maybe just kosher he would have put in there. Then everybody would do it. It's almost like today, I feel in certain places. I felt this more about 8 years ago than I feel about it today. It was much stronger then. It's almost if I would tell someone to put on tefillin because God said so, they wouldn't do it. But if I told them about some deep spiritual, mystical thing that it does for you, oh, we'll do it. Of course we'll do it. Right, so if Hashem says, yeah, but the Zohar says, okay, we'll do it. It's like it's a imbalance in the way the world thinks.
So on that, I know this is kind of going against the idea of what you're saying about the idea of minhag and everything. But I just want to understand the Arab issue. If someone comes to you as they're walking to shul on Shabbat and they see the Arab is down, what would you do?
The same thing I do when someone comes and tells me that the Erev is up. I didn't put up this Erev. So, I know you're not asking me a question about this Erev, but I want to just clarify before I tell you what I would do in a different situation. I didn't put up this Erev. Whoever put up this Erev are considered by the public to be rabbis who are Torah scholars. I don't have the authority to doubt their judgment. All I could say is I didn't make that call, so I don't know either direction. But they are, if you're part of their community, you can rely on another Torah scholar's judgment. In general, what would I do if an Eruv was down? I'm not an expert in the laws of Eruvin, but assuming that I was, carrying today in our communities, according to most opinions, is a rabbinic prohibition. Because we don't have public thoroughfares like there used to be. According to most authorities, Manhattan is a public thoroughfare. There's more than 600,000 people drive down Broadway every day. I just read that 5.2 million people take the New York subway system every day. Some of that numbers, 5 points, like the whole state of Israel on a subway. It's incredible. That is considered a Reshut HaRabim D'Oraita. Biblically, carrying there could be violating one of the prohibitions of Shabbat. Our rabbi said anywhere that's not that public, but it's still public, we prohibit you carrying from on Shabbat, unless it has an eruv, meaning they made an extra rule with an exception. It has a back door to it. The back door is you put up some strings, you put up a wall, whatever it is that you put up, you can carry there. If the eruv being down is a rabbinic prohibition, but for whatever reason continuing carrying or not, or stopping to carry would end up with people violating a biblical prohibition, one would have to make the proper judgment call, biblical versus rabbinic. Which one do I do? And I would tell you, in that situation, I'd have to know which variables to plug into that equation. So if there was a biblical doubt I was worried about, I probably wouldn't say anything. And the very simple one, if you tell people the eruv is down and people still carry, what does the rabbi know? That happens. And so what do you do in that situation? It might be better not to tell anybody. It's better, no, it doesn't halakha. It's better they shouldn't know and violate than now they know the eruv is down, they're still going to do it. Then a simple, why would people challenge the rabbi? Because they carried their house keys to shul. And they have no other way of getting home. So it's almost like you're telling them, sorry, you can't take your keys home, you're going to have to sleep in the backyard tonight. And people, even if they're the holiest of holy, they're going to struggle with carrying their keys back home. And so they end up doing it. It might have been better for you not to announce it. I'm not saying that's the blanket rule, but every psak halacha has to come with a certain calculation. And to summarize everything I said today, don't be so tolerant of people doing things that are not written in Jewish law. Jewish law is a great, I chose that word, it's a gray area, many different interpretations of Jewish law. But things that are dubbed as custom, tradition, community standards, I don't care if they're Hasidic, if they're Ashkenazi, if they're Sephardic, if they're Yemenite, if they're wherever you want to pull them out of. They're not good enough to undermine a system of trust between Torah scholars and other Torah scholars, or between Jews and other Jews. It's not good enough, it's not worth it, and that's, in my opinion, what has destroyed our religious Judaism to this day, and it will continue eating at our core if we let it keep it up. So, if you hear one of your kids coming home with a little tidbit from school, our teacher said we shouldn't do this, tell them, with all due respect to your teacher, I don't want Gog Magog to happen before it needs to happen. All right, everyone have a good night.